Welcome to another real-time strategy top list. With the recent-ish release of the Vampire Coast faction, I thought now would be a good time to put my thoughts to each DLC as a kind of a retrospective that has been released so far for the series, for the first and second Total War Warhammer games. I will split this video into two videos, one for my top 5 and one for the worst 5. The top 5 will be coming shortly. These are mini reviews for each one that I list. This video is focused on my worst 5 DLCs for the franchise so far. I will be concentrating on mostly paid DLC rather than the free DLC Creative Assembly have released, but both might have some outliers thrown in which were free. I hope you guys enjoy, and as always, this is my opinion. If you don't like the opinion, just leave it down below. I'm always happy to have a discussion with you guys, and it's great to have an open forum for that kind of thing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the list. Number 5. The Queen and the Crone. Now this one was the second major DLC for Total War Warhammer 2. A very odd pick, but one that worked well thematically. I have stated in previous videos of mine that if the series is building up to the end times, then Alarielle needed to be in the game. Without her in the game, Tyrion couldn't have a child with her, which would then be kidnapped by Manfred and sacrificed by Arkan the Black to resurrect Nagash, which kind of ignites the whole end times era. Alarielle the Radiant being the mother of this child, whose death sparks the end of the world, and her being a hugely important character to the High Elves in her own right, needed to be present in some capacity. And her being a legendary lord is no better fit. Hellebron, however, as interesting of a character she is no Alarielle. I always thought that this DLC was very imbalanced. I think Alarielle is an excellent lord, a very different one to play, and very fun campaign mechanics. Hellebron not only was broken on release, but she was just a better witch elf. I have an entire Let's Play campaign of Hellebron, and throughout it I didn't feel that she had anything that really made her stand out, or made me play differently other than just throw her into a blob of enemies and watch the blood fly. The new Blood Voyage mechanic is great, but amounts to an equivalent of a mini Chaos Stirs incursion into enemy lands for a few turns, and you can't control it. There are, however, good units included in this DLC, and 2 more lords. It's cheap, but I feel that more could have been done to Hellebron to make her stand out, and make the DLC less imbalanced. This, of course, personal taste. You may think differently than me, and that's okay. But I always would pick Alarielle over Hellebron. If they made this DLC the Queen and the Captain, and really fleshed out Lokir Felheart, naval mechanics, pirate plundering, and establishment of coves, and even naval battles, it would have been so much better and more unique. It would have also served as a great beta test for their later implementation of the Vampire Coast faction. It's still an okay DLC, but the main reason that it's on this list is because the potential was so much more with the Dark Elf side. Number 4. The King and the Warlord. This was the second released DLC, third if you count Chaos Warriors, for the original Total War Warhammer game. And much like a later DLC on this list, it shows. The content just isn't really there. Now, I will admit I love the Skarsnik edition. It was something I wanted so much in the early days of the game, and you can find that out by listening to my top 10 Wanted Lords list. But much like the DLC before this in this list, the imbalance is terrible. And this DLC definitely leans more towards Skarsnik than Belegar. In this DLC, you got 2 new legendary lords, Skarsnik and Belegar, 2 new lord types, 6 new units, and 22 regiments of renown. Squig herds, hoppers, and nasty skulkers were added into the game, and they are the best additions. All armor-piercing units that really helped the greenskins early on against the dwarves. The dwarves got rangers, a bolt thrower, and bugman's rangers. All pretty weak and rarely used by myself personally whenever I play, and nothing quarrelers can do but better, other than their skulk and vanguard abilities. I have gone into more depth why I think the bolt thrower is terrible, and it is in my worst units list. As you can probably tell, the units themselves are pretty one-sided. One of the dwarven units added is just a reskin of the other new unit. Squigs and squig hoppers are completely different models and have very different uses, and are just more interesting to use. The bolt thrower is too specific for an early game siege engine, and nothing that a cannon could not do better for a late game monster unit, which the bolt thrower is designed to kill. The main mechanic of these new legendary lords' starting positions were that they both need to take Carrick 8 peaks. The goblins need it to recruit orc units, and the dwarves need it so they don't continue to take a crippling public order debuff and unit upkeep cost each turn. Which one of these do you think is more balanced? Bedegar is so hard to manage because you cannot field a big enough army to take the peaks due to the bloated upkeep cost of the most basic units. The Lord himself is nothing interesting either, with no real unique factors to him other than his Oathstone ability. His challenge is this micromanagement of his province and armies so they don't destroy themselves from within. Skarsnik can only field goblin units, which in itself is a challenge, but a really cool one, thematic and fun. The DLC is cheap, so it's just but only get it for the Skarsnik side and units. The Dwarven side of this DLC is a real letdown. Bedegar deserved better, but then again, he deserved better than getting killed by Queek Headtaker's Dwarf Gouger through the temple in the lore. So I guess it's fitting that his DLC is just as disappointing as his death. Number 3. The Grim and the Grave. The Grim and the Grave introduced 2 new legendary lords, 5 new units, 5 new battle maps, and 18 new regiments of renown. Unfortunately, the 2 new legendary lords introduced are some of the worst in the game. The units are nothing to write home to, and the maps, well, are nothing you can't get better on the Steam Workshop. It's a cheap DLC, which is good, because the amount of content you get for the price is pretty lackluster. You do also get the Archlector and Strigoi Ghoul King as recruitable lords, and these I do enjoy, but neither of these weren't already heroes you could recruit. But I guess it's cool you can have them leading an army now. They are strong in their own right and have some unique abilities, but are just recycled assets. I'm always happy for new content. More content, of course, means more variety, which is always a good thing. But the majority of this DLC is filler. It doesn't change the game that much, and the legendary lords are very odd choices for their factions at the time. At the time of this release, there was a lot of options for both to expand their legendary rosters. There are only like 4 main characters for each faction. So why not introduce Boris or Isabella in these? Isabella came later, but Boris never really got the love he deserved, and was just kind of snuck in. Just a very forgettable DLC, which is why it's my number 3. Number 2. Chaos Warriors Race Pack. This one was quite controversial even before the game came out. It was a pre-order bonus for the first game, but one that wasn't really worth the asking price at the time. Since then, Chaos has had a few minor updates and some more units added, but they are still the weakest faction in terms of their potential. I've mentioned this so many times in my top 10s before, but to briefly go over it again, Chaos have an incredible selection of units, magic, monsters and heroes to choose from, and none of it is in the game. Demons aren't even present, and there is no mention of the 4 different Chaos gods, leaving the faction as this Chaos undivided army that lacks the personality and colour of any of the allegiances it leaves out. Chaos Warriors Race Pack included 3 legendary lords, an entirely new faction and units, new hero and lord types, a new campaign style of play, and new infighting mechanics, where if you had 2 Chaos armies close to each other, they would get attrition. It added 15 new units, new quests and abilities and magic items. It was the most content-heavy DLC until 7 months later, when the Realm of the Wood Elves was released for the first game, and it was a pre-order bonus. The divide it caused when it was released was because of this. The entire faction was locked out behind a paywall as a pre-order bonus, which you now need to pay for if you want to play as them. Utterly ridiculous, especially since they are the main antagonists of the game in many ways, and at the time there were only 4 other factions. Chaos were the most gameplay different faction on release, adopting a more nomadic system of empire building, with very unique and well modelled units, though upon playing them on release they are a bit lackluster and dull. Its disappointing integration into the game still causes it to have a 46% rating on the Steam store. No factions should be blocked behind a paywall on release, especially a main faction. Imagine the Skaven being a pre-order bonus for the second game, or the Romans being a pre-order bonus for Rome 3, which is why they are my number 2. Number 1. Blood for the Blood God. I think this one speaks for itself. The old world is a grim place, a violent place, and one where entire races are only existing, or in most cases barely surviving, through violence and bloody victory after bloody victory. There is a reason Khorne exists in the old world as a chaos god of blood. It's because of the constant war and bloodshed the chaos god can feed from and enjoy that is constantly going on in the old world, somewhere. So when Creative Assembly block the blood and gore behind a paywall in a game that's world is based on bloody war, and then name the DLC after the same aforementioned God of Blood and Gore's favourite catchphrase, it's obscene. Granted it's cheap, but that's not the point. Why do we have to pay for something that should be in the game from the start, and pay for something that is a key part of the world's grim feel? We don't have to pay for rain or snow. The violence of this world is a pivotal part of the world building. This world is visceral, violent, unforgiving and brutal. It's war unending. Imagine how weird it would be if a 40k game had no blood. The old world is a fantasy world driven by war. War creates violence, gore and blood, so the violence brings this grim sense of impending doom, holding back the tide of evil and death at all times, so blood and gore is a key identifier. Creative Assembly, I think, realised that they were being cheeky with this DLC when the second game came around, so offered the blood for free for people who own the first game, for the second game. But why not just make it free entirely? I understand their reasoning is so they can release the game under a lower age range, so younger audiences can play the game and therefore increases their sales so they can target multiple age ranges and demographics. But many other games achieve this with a simple checkbox in the options menu for blood. A rating of 40% on the Steam store speaks for itself, which for reference is lower than No Man's Sky's rating on its release in 2016. Undoubtedly the worst DLC for the series. And that was my list. Let me know which DLC for Total War is the worst in your opinion and why. I would love to hear your guys' opinions on the subject. Keep an eye out for my next one, rating the best DLC. I hope you guys enjoy it and enjoyed this one. As always, thanks for watching and happy gaming.